Well, hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday evening. My name is Stephen Meade with Domicile Real Estate for people who love houses. This is our Southern California housing market update for June 21st, 2022. And we have kind of a fun title for this. This is going to be shocking news for some people, and others you're going to be like, that's about what I thought. Most economic experts, including me, are making educated guesses. This is sort of a reality. And anyone who tells you, A, they know with any reasonable certainty what's going to happen, probably not right. B, exactly what interest rates are going to do, probably not going to be right. And if they are, it's because they're lucky, not because they're good. So what is the point of videos like this if these are usually educated guesses? Well, it's important to understand the context of information and what you can use for some of these things. It also gives you an idea of what to look for in our market. So with that said, we're going to go through our statistics this week, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I'm going to tell you at each stage, what changes are we looking for in some of these to give us an idea of what might be happening in the future. And at the end, I'm going to tell you why this is just a small part of how you make your decisions. So let's get started. So first thing is our number of active listings on the market. And the great news here is, look at this. We have rising inventory. For those of you who are buyers out there, both our under 1 million and our 1 to 2 million inventory is up strongly over its high points of last year, which was in the summer. You actually have choice in your listings, right? And we want to watch the shape of this curve going forward, because if this starts to flatten out, that indicates that there might be some other processes in place. Right now, and this is a topic I've talked about a couple times before, the way the real estate market works is this: something happens, right? Interest rates sharply rise, war breaks out, any number of sort of stimulus to our market. And then the market sort of, the ground is a little unsteady for a few weeks, and we sort of seek and find a new equilibrium. And I think we're in that stage where we're looking for a new equilibrium and a new stabilization point. So keep an eye out for signs that that stabilization point is happening. You will actually start to see these curves flatten out yet, and we sort of come up with sort of a new level of equilibrium inventory in our market. Here's our new listings over the last 14 days. And this is kind of important because overall, if you add these numbers together, right, we have like a little over 3,000 and maybe around 1,800. So we'll say 3,100 and 1,800. That is 4,900 new listings total. And if you look back here at our height last year, where were we in new listings every 14 days? We actually were around 5,500 new listings, or about 10% higher. So our rate of listings coming on the market is actually not terribly high. In fact, it's below where we were at this point last year, maybe about 10% off in terms of new listings coming on the market. And so what I'm looking for in this number is I want to see some kind of reaction here. If we see this total number of new listings in the market start to pull back, that tells me that sellers are reacting to new market dynamics and they are pulling back on the number of listings. What does that mean for you if you were a buyer or seller? What does it mean? Well, it means that that pressure for prices to go down starts to evaporate when you start removing new inventory on the market, right? Because we're always talking about that supply and demand dynamic. So last 14 days of new listings, this represents the supply side of the market. And traditionally, the supply side is delayed versus demand. So these things don't always happen at the same time, right? So if demand starts to drop and supply is going to react, it usually will not do so for a few weeks. Now, if we're looking at supply, what do we see here? Or we look at our demand. Well, we do see that demand did drop. And where has demand gone over, say, since the beginning of May? At the beginning of May, we've definitely seen demand drop off a little bit, but it hasn't dropped off by as much maybe as people would have thought in this market. And so we've actually been witnessing really more of a steady decline in demand over the last number of months. In fact, you can see around the holidays here, we have this big hole, but if you draw this line, I mean, this is kind of a rather steady progression downward. Now, if we look at our absorption rate, that really tells us at this exact moment in time, where is our balance of supply and demand? Well, it is under 70%, and in fact, in the 50s for our $1 to $2 million price category. So what does that mean? That means we are in a state at this exact moment in time of more balanced demand, meaning it's not really so much a buyer or a seller's market. It's kind of in the middle. I've said this 1,000 times before. I'm going to repeat it. Your individual market, and in fact, the particular home you have to sell or buy, may not experience exactly what this graph is showing, because this is a market average, right? This is an aggregate of all of the homes on the market in these price ranges. But if you have a particularly hot home that you'd like to buy, it will see competition. If you have a difficult home to sell, you may be getting crickets, and it may very much feel like a buyer's market from your perspective. By the way, a little bit of a plug here. If you'd like to know what it is really for your individual property, definitely reach out to us separately. Closed prices. Again, this data is 4 to 6 weeks old. That is a nature of based on when things close versus when those contracts are actually negotiated and signed. You know, last week we saw price drops in all of our categories. Guess what happens? We saw rebounds in all 3 categories this week. You could definitely see, though, a bit of a flattening of the curve, as it were, in all of these, right? Either slower increases or really starting to flatten out. And I think that's what we're going to see as time goes on. Now, if we look at our percent still active after 14 days, these numbers are hitting new heights. This is hardly surprising, right? We had interest rates go up significantly. The market is in a little bit of a scramble mode where it is seeking a new equilibrium point. I have a lot of faith that we'll find it. I'm actually even hearing this past weekend that open houses were moderately busy again in a lot of open houses, meaning buyers are starting to sort of adjust to that new normal. We are just going to have to wait and see, though, is that just an artifact of nothing to do on Father's Day? Or is that actually seeing some bit of people kind of coming back and sort of reevaluating their options? If we look at our close to list ratio, right, remember, we talked about this number coming down, and that's exactly what we're seeing. I think these days of the average home going for over 106% of list price in that $1 to $2 million category, I think those days are over for a while at least. We still are over 100% in both of our price categories. I think these are going to scoot down. Historically, what is a normal number for this, right? What do we usually see? Well, honestly, normally we see between 99 and 100%. That is about where a normal market in an equilibrium is. So we'll have to see if we end up getting there, if we kind of persist a little bit above the 100%. Now, our days on market for new contracts. This is a bit of a bellwether, right? Because this is a best case scenario. These are the homes that actually are selling, and we are starting to see this number go up. What I think is interesting, though, is these numbers any different than we were at in September and October, November of last year? No, we are still lower than those numbers for days on market for new contracts, which is something very interesting. And we are not that far off, really, from where we were at this point last year, especially not in that $1 to $2 million category. Now we have our 3-way graph. This is always a favorite of mine. Let's recap. The blue line is our payment index. So just as a reminder, what we did is we indexed everything back to June of 2018. So what we did is we took payment on a median priced home, the CPI index, and a rent index. And we all tied them back to this point in time, June of 2018. And then we watched where this graph shows us how these have moved in relation to one another, right? How has inflation gone? Has it gone faster or slower than home prices? Well, it was with home prices, and then payments kind of went way up, and so did rents beyond inflation, right? That's actually not that unusual. Historically, over time, rents and housing do tend to outperform inflation. This is a result of increasing regulatory requirements in building houses, reduction in the number of land, the rise of NIMBYism. There are a whole bunch of reasons why homes continue to be less affordable over time. If we look at our payment index, what do we see here? Back in February, this number started going up. What is that? Interest rates rising, right? And where are we right now? Things got a little bit better, and then they jumped back up here. And what does this number mean? We are 60% higher than we were of June of 2018. So in 4 years, the payment on a median priced home has jumped 60% over 4 years. If you break that down in a non-compounded way, that's 15% a year, which is a lot. Really, we've got some inflation and some other things need to catch up a little bit. And the spike of it jumping back up here, what is this? Well, that is the recent interest rate jumps that we have had and the increase in the median price week over week. Now, if we look at rentals, rentals is especially interesting, right? Because you see this rental number really kind of mirrors what happened with payments. It's this yellow line here, and then payments started going up, rent started going up, and then they jumped. So we almost saw a delayed reaction. And now where are we? We're at a point where these are about 18%, 19% apart from each other, or points versus our origination point. Rents are 41, 42% higher than they were June 2018. So remember, consumers are constantly evaluating this choice. Should I rent or should I be a buyer, right? If you own a home, you could sell it and become a renter. If you do not own a home, you can keep renting or become a buyer. This really is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to consumers making decisions. I really wish the Fed would look at this more. They don't. I think they're wrong. But this is how most consumers make choices. Now, in the long run, really, you should evaluate a lot of long-term ideas of homeownership. But really, most consumers focus on the short-term portion. It will be very interesting to see if these rents do, albeit much more slowly, continue their rise to meet up with that payment index. I think that really is going to say a lot about our market and prices in the long run. Now here, just to show, this is, of course, our prevailing mortgage rates on a national basis. Things hovered right around 3% for the longest time. Then they started going up, and here we are at just under 6 percentage points. The Fed has raised rates. I know we talked about this a little bit in our first-time home buyer video. I think we talked a little bit about it last week too. People always ask me, what do I think? I think it's a step in the right direction. I think they didn't raise it enough, and I think they didn't start raising soon enough. But here we are. So the question is this going to rein in inflation or not? I think if inflation reigns in, you will see those mortgage interest rates stabilize. And the reason mortgage rates jump is when everybody thought, the Fed included, thought this inflation was quote unquote transitory, which is the term the Fed used, or temporary, there was not a lot of concern of lenders, right? Like, why would you want to give out a loan at 3% if you thought inflation was going to stay at 8%, right? That you wouldn't do that. It wouldn't make sense for a bank to do this. The reason they did it is because they thought it was transitory in nature. Well, now it looks like we have an inflation problem, and when we're going to have to do things to get it to knock down. And that is what got lenders scared and what really started bumping those interest rates in the bond market. I think that's really what spooked the bond market. So if the bond market regains some confidence, that's when you're going to see interest rates either stabilize or even start to drop a little bit. My guess is that 6% is not permanent, but I don't want to say we've reached a peak yet. I can definitely see directions where the market feels like it's not enough and that there's more work to do before that inflation is stabilized and reined in. Anyhow, thank you for watching. We love to have you with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Once again, if you are looking to buy or sell real estate in Southern California, namely Orange and Los Angeles counties, we are absolutely here to lend you our expertise. Do not hesitate to reach out. We can't wait to hear from you. Questions, comments, we love them. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you again real soon.